Hello and welcome back to mHUB Inside. It's great to have you. Happy New Year, happy 2022. We took a little hiatus, so this is the first video back. Sorry for the long delay. I hope you guys didn't miss us too much, but we have plenty of good content coming for the rest of the year. Today's episode is another Essential Toolbox. Today we're going to be talking about CNC equipment for both lathes, which is what this box is, and mills. These are boxes specifically from our shop. And you can see what we need. These are kits that I've put together myself and things that I recommend. While nothing is mandatory except for probably a measurement device of some kind, you're going to build a kit specific to your shop and the things that you do and the products that you make. But these are the tools that are going to cover, or in some variation, something that you're going to need. So let's get started. Each one of these, their layout's a little bit of the same. So daily tools in the first couple. Actually, first thing to talk about is the toolbox itself. You want something that's nice and rigid and hardy, that's not going to tip over when I open a couple of drawers. Not to drop any brands or anything. We're huge fans of the US General boxes from Harbor Freight. I know it's Harbor Freight and it's a little bit cheap. Better price isn't always the best. Like obviously you can go buy a Snap-on and pay $2,000 for the same box. If you don't need it, there's no need to spend that money. For certain things, of course. So, first drawer is here, daily use. One thing I highly recommend doing, it's just going to make your life a lot easier, is to do the Kaizen cutout. That way, if there's ever a tool that's not there at the beginning of your day for some reason, you know exactly what's missing, and you don't have to go searching for it in the middle of the day. One of the things that we always tell our members to do, part of the cleanup, and part of the startup procedures, make sure all the tools are there so that you don't have to go searching for something in the middle of a job. And you know, time is money, and if you're delayed looking for a tool, that really sucks. So a couple of different stages of the process, a couple of different tools. So you're going to do your setup, you're going to do operations, then you're going to do post-processing, and then cleaning up the machine. And that's kind of how some of these tools are laid out as well. So in the very beginning, for setup, we have tools specific to our job. So you can see here, these are the tools that are going to be for setting up our equipment, our vices, that kind of stuff, fixture plates, the standard tools that get used every day. You can see they're a little different per drawer because these are going to be metric, just because on the lathe, that's mostly what's on there. So those are the tools that are there because that's what we need. Something that you're going to use a ton of that you definitely need if you're going to do any kind of machining is a 1, 2, 3 block. They're just super handy, super cheap. It's a precision ground piece of metal that's exactly 1 inch, 2 inch, and 3 inch. They come with a variety of different hole patterns. You can use them for setups. You can use them for making sure something's square, holding your material in very weird ways, because machining isn't necessarily the most difficult thing in the world, but figuring out how to hold your stuff down is really the art and the tricky science to this. Something else is squares in general, machinist squares, so something like this, come in a variety of sizes, and you can see we have a couple different sizes. Super helpful and handy to make sure that what I'm holding on my table is perfectly perpendicular and square. One of the, well, now, so that's kind of the setup stuff. Now talking about measurement equipment, a variety of different things. One thing that most machinists usually keep in their pocket is just a nice little 6-inch square, or 6-inch ruler. Usually you just pull it out, you can measure something really quick. But the workhorse of the shop in general is going to be a caliper. So good quality caliper. If you can get it, or spend a little extra money for the coolant rating, that way the numbers won't go all crazy on you if things get a little wet. It's just super helpful. This is something you might want to spend a little bit of money on, just because buy once, cry once. For the mill calipers, often for lathe parts and mill parts as well, it's going to be a micrometer, which is just another level of accuracy. We have a 1 inch and a 2 inch for our lathe kits, since it's all round parts. But we also have a caliper in there as well. So those are some measurements. Oh, another thing super duper handy is a dial indicator as well as a height gauge. These are going to be used for making sure your setup is square, measuring tools, things of that nature. To go along with that, mag base. This is my favorite one in the shop. It's a little guy, but it's super helpful for doing machine maintenance. It's very adjustable. It's magnetic on the bottom, and the adjustment is on the bottom, so I'm not having to fiddle with me moving it while getting all the settings. So those are some setup parts. Oh, additionally, chip brushes, variety of sizes, as well as rags and a little bit of alcohol to wipe things down. Clean surfaces mean you don't have a chip that's making your part sit a little funny. Setup tools, we have some things that are dependent for our shop as well. This is just a repeatable depth stop for the lathe, super duper handy. If you're doing manual setups for everything, but all your stock is cut to the same size, it's just very nice to have. Some other interesting things in here, it's actually in the second drawer as well, is bar stock of ground sizes. That way, if I need a relatively known surface, and this is 3/8 of an inch, I know this is exactly 3 inches, I can calibrate things off of that. So we have 1/4 inch, 3/8, and 1/2 inch. You can see I actually have 2 of them in here because they're so handy. And that's it for the first 2 drawers, except for deburring, but we'll come back to that. Some other lovely tools. Well, actually, we'll talk about deburring as well. So when you're done with your part, so this is a post-process part, often you'll have a really sharp corner that might need to be knocked down. Old school, just use a file. They're super helpful for everything. But deburring tools in general just do the job quicker and a little bit safer. You can get a whole huge variety of different tips for different applications. These things are lifesavers. Buy the whole kit if you can, or buy this, the size that's necessary for what you're doing, and then buy the additional little heads. So second drawers. These in the lathe and on the mill are going to be a little bit more specific things. So here we're going to hold the standard 5C collets that we use. So this is a 1/4, 3/8, and 1/2 inch, just because those hold additional tools that go in the machine all the time. Instead of going and find them in the other tool case or the drawer, they're just here. So that's really nice. The different T handles, that kind of stuff. Another touch-off tool that I like, it's technically a mill tool, but we use it often for the lathe, is just an electronic center or edge finder, and we actually use this for setting off tools very, very quickly in the lathe. We used to have a whole other process that sucked. This guy is super duper helpful. That is it mostly for that drawer. On the mill, definitely mandatory so that you can do repeated setups, the exact same torque wrenches. We have foot-pounds, inch-pounds, and that way, if you're always cranking your vise to 20 foot-pounds or whatever, your part isn't going to come out different because you squeeze it a little harder and maybe it flexed and it's coming out a little thinner because you removed some more material. But if you always set it up the exact same, you're more likely to get repeated parts. Inspection tools with just a little eyeglass so you can see very fine tool marks and that kind of stuff, just for evaluating the surface finish of your parts. Machinist stones are super duper handy. They come in a variety of grits, just so that it's a very fine stone, so you can knock out burrs on the top of your vise table or anything like that. Not so much for the lathe, not really applicable for that. A mirror is also super helpful for both the mill and the lathe, seeing behind stuff, not having to crane your neck, get into those really uncomfortable positions. We have a couple of tools that are also used. One of the standard tools for opening and closing vices is going to be a 7/8 or 3/4 inch wrench, which we have a couple of here. But on our orange vices, because it's such a long depth, we actually have a whole kit specifically with a ratcheting wrench, a ratcheting socket that just makes life so much easier. So setting up your kit so you don't have to go find that thing just saves you so much more time. Third door down, machinist manuals for our machines in particular. One thing that is really nice to have is just some scrap copper. It's a little machinist trick that you can use this if your part isn't exactly square, just a material that'll form, or if you're holding something in a vise or in a chuck that you don't want to mar the surface, you can use something like this or a soda can that will actually get deformed but still grip your part, and then you won't have those chuck teeth marks on your stock. Some ER20 collets, because that's what a number of our tools hold. This bad boy, another measurement setup tool, is our concentric dial indicator, which actually allows us to figure out the center point of drill bits. It's so much easier than using a dial indicator on a mag base stuck in the chuck, because this thing is going to offset but then spin so that we can actually fine tune in the drill location and get the 0 point relative to the spindle. Just some random tools, which, another measurement thing to make sure that anything that's on a quick change tool post holder is set exactly on center. Little tidbits and like that are nice to get to come across. Let's see what else we got. Not everything that you make ends up perfect. Over here on my right, you'll see the land of broken bits and bobs. So these are all the tools that people have broken. It's part of the learning experience. You're going to break stuff too. It's also worth a little bit of money if you save up that carbide, because it sells for scrap rates pretty nicely. So don't be ashamed of displaying some of that stuff. We have just some excess stock, so in case I need to use a piece of aluminum or something while setting everything up, it's handy to grab instead of going to find it from our tool rack or a stock rack. Random little bits of tooling. Nothing huge here. Setup machine, more bits of copper and brass. These are going to be for more custom setups, so it's nice to have a drawer where if you've built a custom jig or something that you use, maybe every 5th job, instead of having to go find it on a dusty shelf, why not keep it at the machine? And I think that's pretty much it for the majority of this. There's not much more exciting on these. Another thing that is at each machine is air and water, so for washing down everything, as well as air for blowing the chips out of holes, or don't blow chips with air, but that way you get coolant out of holes, and you can use the air to blow off the coolant. These are hanging at each machine. This is a dead blow hammer. What this does is when you hit, it doesn't bounce, but because of this plastic surface, it also doesn't mar. Get a brass hammer, soft rubber mallet, something along those lines. You want to use something like a ball peen, or the surface of your vices or your parts or whatever it is that you're hitting, don't hit your vise, are going to get dented and dinged and no longer be square. So definitely another mandatory tool. Something else that we keep a couple of floating around is a refractometer, and this is for telling our coolant concentration on each machine. If you're running a little bit light on your coolant, you might start getting some flash rust. If you're running a little heavy, you're wasting coolant, and coolant's not necessarily expensive, and you don't want to throw away money. I believe that is mostly it. A couple of things like Scotch-Brite are always super helpful, just something I saw to remind me. But if you'd like to see more toolbox videos or other kits for things, please let us know. We would be happy to show you how we set up all of our equipment. Please join us next time, and see you guys in the future.